Hello everyone and welcome back to the History of Everything podcast YouTube channel. And on today's episode, we're going to be telling you 3 facts that you probably did not know about the Mongols. If you did know, then hey, congratulations, good for you. Make sure to like that video to let everyone know just how smart you are. If you didn't know any of these, then also like the video because, well, I mean, it kind of helps me out, so thank you. But anyway, on to the facts. Now you're probably gonna look at that previous title and think, wait, what? No, how would that happen? Come on. But the crazy part is, it's actually true. If you go back and look in history, there was a man by the name of Ogedei Khan. This was the second Kagan, meaning the great Khan of the Mongol Empire. This was the guy who was the 3rd son of Genghis Khan, and he had actually succeeded his father back in 1229. Once he had taken over the throne, he would continue to go on and expand the empire of the Mongols as much as possible, and it was during his reign that the Mongols would finally destroy the Jin dynasty, as well as begin their war against Southern Song. It was during this time that they would also go on to start fighting against Korea, that they would expand into the Middle East, and also start moving towards Europe, which the first one on the chopping block in that scenario was the Russian principalities. In 1240, Kiev was sacked by the Mongols, which marked the end of Russian resistance, and the Mongols would continue their advance into Europe with the invasion of Central Europe, and they were intent on conquering everything, all the way, going across the entire continent to what they called the Great Sea. In other words, they're talking about conquering literally everything all the way over to France and the Atlantic Ocean. But in the end, that actually did not happen because Ogedei died. You see, back in December of 1241, just as the Mongols were about to invade Western Europe, Ogedei died during a drinking bout. And no, we're not talking about water. The man had a real strong proclivity for alcohol. So when all of his varying commanders who were out on campaign heard what happened, because obviously messengers had to be sent to all of the different armies that were out fighting, they immediately abandoned the campaign and turned back to go home so that they could host the Kurultai, this being the military gathering that was going to determine who the next Khan was going to be of all of them. Mind you, at this time, the Mongols were preparing to march into Europe itself, and so the fact that Ogedei had a severe drinking problem and died suddenly due to alcohol poisoning, it is possible that that is quite literally the thing that ended up saving Europe from being ravaged or conquered by the Mongols. Really weird thing to think about. The Mongols, like all other nomadic people of the Asian steppe, had a tendency to rely on milk from their livestock for food and drink, things that would make cheese, yogurt, curds, fermented drinks, etc. But while you definitely could get meat if you went and slaughtered your animals, this is typically not something that you wanted to do, because slaughtering them meant that they were not going to be able to produce more milk or other things that you could get from them. It is a pretty bad idea on the steppe when everything is in short supply. Thus, in most cases, the way that Mongols would get their meat is by hunting it, and the biggest of all hunts was something called a nerg. And I'm telling you this right now, this method of hunting was absolutely insane. I can really only imagine what it was like to see this happening, and here's why. Over the course of a nerg, what would happen is that you would have a long line of riders that would cover a line up to 130 kilometers, around 80 miles, and this would be marked out by flags who would move from the outer end inwards to eventually enclose a large pre-selected geographical area. The riders, who would be accompanied by hunting dogs, would then gradually move over a period of several weeks in towards a smaller pre-designated circular zone that was also marked out with flags beforehand so that the animals that they were all driving there could be more easily killed. Mind you, we are talking about hundreds or even thousands of riders leading thousands upon thousands of dogs that have encircled this massive area to try and garner as many animals as they can and push it towards the center so that they will be able to hunt them freely. It is insane the scale that we are thinking about here. The riders would go and work in shifts in order to ensure that no animal was able to actually escape the cordon, and anyone who did let an animal through the line would be severely punished. Once all of the animals were penned in, only the Khan could then open the hunt with the first shot, and anyone starting off before him would end up being executed. You weren't allowed to kill these animals beforehand. It had to be started with him. After the hunt, some of these animals were then deliberately allowed to escape the entrapment in order to make sure that, well, there was actually animals after them. You wouldn't want to exterminate literally everything, because then that means that you couldn't go back to the same area and hunt again because there were no more animals. After this, with potentially thousands upon thousands of animals dead over the course of the nerg, what would follow would be a 9-day feast, in which, as you can probably imagine, there would be a lot of meat to eat. Speaking of a lot of animals, there's a tradition in Mongolia that, quote, a Mongol without a horse is like a bird without wings. The Mongol people and horses are two things that are inextricably combined. There really is no way to separate them. Even to this day, in many parts of Mongolia, horses still play a crucial part in life and society. In fact, even with modern agriculture, one of the crazy things about Mongolia is that there are more horses in Mongolia today than there are people, as it's estimated that there's approximately 3 million people in Mongolia, but more than 3 million horses. But historically, back in the day, there was probably even a greater disparity in these numbers, as any Mongol horseman under a Khan could have 3, 4, 5, even a dozen different horses that they themselves individually own. These being creatures that over the course of traveling or battle, they were easily able to swap them out for a fresh mount. Now mind you, the Mongol horses were not insane war horses. These weren't massive beasts that were able to easily crush the opponents in front of them. No, instead they were pretty short, pretty stocky, but they simultaneously were very agile and fast with very high endurance. This is something that would in turn allow their riders to execute very complex maneuvers very quickly, and warriors would often ride for hours or even days at a time, covering massive distances across the steppe, and each additional horse that they had would mean that they would be able to ride further before having to change their mount. I mean, Mongol armies were on average able to travel anywhere between 60 to 100 miles per day, and this being at a point where they could show up to battle that night or the very next day and be completely rested for battle. The reason being is that even over the course of traveling, they could sleep in the saddle, and upon arriving to a location, simply switch out their mount and be ready for battle at that time. Their endurance and how this could be used for strategies was absolutely insane, as was demonstrated during the Battle of the Kalka River. You see, what happened over the course of this battle was that after initially engaging the Georgian cavalry, the Mongols appeared to retreat and lured the much larger detachment of the Georgians after them on a chase. This went on for a large extended period until finally, exhausted, the Georgian cavalry now came face to face with a fresh Mongol force, as the Mongols were able to lead them into a trap, switch off their horses for fresh horses, and then turn around in orderly lines and utterly crush their enemy in front of them, who, again, were now exhausted. This was the famous feigned Mongolian retreat, something that was only possible to be executed to such a degree thanks to the horses, both in the quality that they had as well as the amount. And the Mongols would use this time and time again to completely crush every enemy in front of them. But now that is the end of the video, and I thank each and every one of you for watching. If you could please remember to like, comment, subscribe, do everything you can to help this video in the algorithm. Also, please let me know in the comments below what it is that we should be covering next, and make sure that you are around tomorrow for when the episode that we're releasing on the History of Everything podcast channel, as in the actual podcast, drops on Mongolians. Thank you for your support, and don't forget to check out Patreon, check out Discord, check out my coffee, check out everything you can to help me and this channel. Goodbye, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.